Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist. I own 52 units of real estate and I help coach people to buy their first multifamily deal. So today I want to talk about the FIRE movement and why I believe the FIRE movement is actually kind of dying, or it's kind of flaming out or burning out. So for me, I really deep dived into the FIRE movement when I first read the book, I think by Tony Robbins, Money Master the Game, where I learned about investing passively into index funds. So from this book, I basically learned a few concepts of you want to dollar cost average, don't time the market, it's time in the market. I know it sounds cliche. And then another one was it's harder to pick individual stocks that to win versus just own the total, US stock market, which is what I essentially did. So for me, it was very timely because I, tried investing in individual stocks. Like I did Apple, which has done well by luck. I tried this like GoPro stock, which lost money. I tried a 3D printing company, which lost money. I tried some other index fund, which lost money. And then I just said, I don't have the time. I don't care to do the research to pick individual stocks. So once I learned about Vanguard index funds, it was very game changing for me because I could just invest into the total US stock market as the majority of my portfolio. I think it's like 50-60%, something like that. I have the total international stock market, which was about 25%, and then I have the total bond market, which was about 5%. So ever since then, I remember mapping out like kind of this compound interest chart where I was investing like I think at the time $3,000 a month into this 3 fund portfolio, and I would sustain that until I was like 53 or something, or 50, and it would grow at on average 7 to 8% per year. And I remember I was like, okay, by the time I'm like 50, I would have enough compound interest in order to basically retire early. And at the time when I first started in 2018, I was 28. I thought retiring at 50 was considered early to me. So basically, that's when I started doing index fund investing, and I still do that today, right? It's super passive. I don't think about it, but I dollar cost average my 401k, I dollar cost average my Vanguard index funds, and I dollar cost average my whole life insurance. So I kind of conceptually taken the concept of um, low cost index funds, compounding over a long time, dollar cost averaging. So obviously my Vanguard, my 401k, that's what I do. For the life insurance, I know the fees are significantly higher, but to me, it's kind of like a different purpose. But the money in the whole life insurance is invested in the SP 500, which I am kind of dollar cost averaging. So, life insurance is just more of a whole life specifically is more of a game for like higher net worth individuals. If you're just getting started, like just term insurance is good enough, and then just invest the difference, right? Buy term, invest the difference is good for like I'd say 99% of the people. But if you're in that 1% where you have a higher net worth, then you can consider max funding whole life insurance as a form of like asset protection, as a form of building tax-free wealth. And it's not the greatest investment, but it is an investment type, right? So just know going in, if you do whole life insurance, it's not the greatest investment. It's just more for those who have a higher net worth. So anyways, that's when I kind of was first introduced the FIRE movement to me. And I think in 2019, I started listening to a lot of podcasts. So, Bigger Pockets, more YouTube channels about investing. So I went down that rabbit hole, and you combine that during COVID when I couldn't go anywhere. I was like really consuming a lot of podcasts every single day. I had a thirst for knowledge. I was very hungry to learn because I wanted to like change my mindset. That was the key thing. And I'm always very curious, and I always love to learn in general. But it was nice to kind of like get your mindset shifted. So that's when I kind of learned about the FIRE movement, and really deep dived into it. So, for me, this was 2019. So at the time, I bought my first single family home, which I house hacked, and I didn't know anything about house hacking from podcasts or YouTube. I just knew my mom did it, and she'd always ask me to post the room on like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and then she would just talk to the tenants. So that's all I knew. But when I bought my first house, I was like, oh, I can do the same thing. Like I can buy a 4-bedroom house. I can live in the master, rent out 3 other bedrooms for like 1,000 each, and it'll lower my expenses. So, after when I started watching more podcasts in 2019, that's when I learned about it, like through Bigger Pockets. So I was like, oh, I was already doing that. So in 2019, that's when I bought my second home. And that's when I really started, learning about, like it's possible to retire early through real estate investing. So I never thought of myself as a real estate investor because I always just thought, oh, I just need a place to live and why pay rent? And that was kind of the mindset I had. So I was just like, okay, I bought my second home and I rented out my last house. So basically, I became an accidental landlord because I literally had a job, um, and then I got a new job and the commute was too far. So I was like, okay, I'll just buy another house that I can live in, the house hack, and rent out the last house. So accidental landlord. And then in 2019, 2020, probably 2021, I really went down the rabbit hole of like real estate investing. And I was like, okay, well, if using index funds can help me retire by, let's say, 50, let's say my 50s, which is early, right? Relatively speaking, most people retire in their, 65 or 60. So I just thought, okay, well, using index funds, I'm pretty much guaranteed to retire, let's just call it 50 to 55. Like, pretty much that's guaranteed. In the way that I approached it, because I was like, okay, I would have been working for 20 years. I would be investing this money, and my cost of living is very low. So I can definitely retire by, let's call it 50. So once I started out learning about real estate investing, and the downside of like the podcast, I would say, is they kind of sell you the hopium of early retirement, financial freedom, where you see those like episodes on Bigger Pockets. Oh, I retired after 2 years of real estate investing. I retired after 1 year of real estate investing. I bought 1,000 units in 1 year. That's a syndicator. So they had these like very like big titles back then. And I think because that was the algorithm was favoring that type of stuff, like, oh, like how I quit my W-2 in like 3 years using real estate, right, as a waiter. So like they had these very like titles, and it kind of sold me this hopium. Um, and obviously, after doing real estate for so long, I just realized that it takes at least 10 years if you're going fast. Realistically, you're going 15 years. So for me, I started in 2017. So for me, 10 years, about 10 to 13 years is realistic. But, one can argue that, I bought obviously in retrospect at a really good time, like pre COVID. And then all those properties that I bought pre COVID or, around 2017 skyrocketed, during COVID. So, and even despite that, like you consider that luck. Um, and I bought some apartments that I was able to double the value, despite like going to 52 units. I basically, been investing for about 8 years now, and I'm just like, even now, I don't feel quite comfortable enough yet to retire because you need time for your real estate portfolio to marinate. You need that time for it to stabilize. You have to wait for the major expenses to be covered before you can comfortably live off this income, right? So it takes time. So I know all those stories where people had those like big titles, like, oh, retired in 2 years from real estate. I'm like, either A, they had a not that great of a job, right? Maybe they're making minimum wage, versus me, I'm a white collar worker, grad doctorate level degree, and I need to replace a 200K plus income, right? So it's harder versus replacing a minimum wage job as a waiter. And what I learned is a lot of these people who are retired, they didn't really retire and live off that real estate income passively. They just left their lower income job, and maybe now they're just fixing and flipping real estate, wholesaling, syndicating and doing this other stuff. But their lifestyle isn't like super glamorous, right? It's just maybe more freedom. Like you're not tied to a W-2 job. They start their own little business. That's usually the case for most of them, right? Like, so usually most of them start like, masterminds. They started like fix and flipping. They started wholesaling. They have other streams of income, not just purely living off real estate. And my goal was to purely live off real estate income to retire, which is a little bit different, right? Like obviously I have coaching, I have all that, but honestly, like my that income is nothing compared to my real estate income and nothing compared to my W-2 income, if I'm being honest. So, I basically fell into those titles, and I really said, okay, like I think the downside of the Bigger Pockets was that it set very unrealistic expectations. And I get it. It was just like interviewing a lot of people like my age who, they just, a lot of them, they just bought in 2017. And then, a lot of them did like short term rentals through Airbnb, and, they hit 20, 30K a month by owning a few Airbnbs. But, fast forward to today, they realize how active it is, and they're now, selling their Airbnbs, 1031 exchange it into a different type of asset. But for me, I never fell into the hype of Airbnb, which was really hot in 2017. I never fell into the hype of midterm rentals or short-term rentals. I just do long-term rentals, the proven boring path. But anyways, I really had this dream now of like, you know what? During 2020, I think, or 2021, I got laid off, and that really fueled my spark to pursue the fire movement. And from there, that's when I went to apartment complexes. I bought my 26 unit, I bought my 20 unit, I bought my mobile home park, I had my pharmacy, I had my Amazon drop shipping store. I was just doing a bunch of different things. And if you've been following my journey, you know that the mobile home park sold for a loss. The pharmacy lost money. The drop shipping store lost money. And the two apartments are doing great. The 26 unit is doing the best. The 20 unit is doing okay. Maybe break even, make a little bit money because there's a lot of CapEx issues. So, that's why I knew that in the people that are interviewing the bigger pockets, they were too new in their real estate journey to really see the full picture. And now I'm starting to see the full picture, right? Like, okay, cool. Like, I could cash flow, 10K a month, but realistically, I know that, okay, there's gonna be a plumbing issue in one of my properties. So the money's being saved aside. So eventually you have to fix everything up over time, right? So you have to own properties long enough to be able to assess, is it worth keeping or is it worth selling? Right? And that's what I'm kind of doing right now with my portfolio. Like I'm assessing each single property. Okay, which ones would I keep? Which ones would I sell? Like which properties am I pruning and which ones am I keeping given the test of time? Right? So I already know. Like if I want to retire, I'm probably going to sell 2 single family homes. I'm going to sell my first house hack I bought in Livermore, California, because it doesn't really cash flow that great. It kind of breaks even, easy tenant, but it has a lot of equity in there. So I have to sell that to pay off this primary residence to wipe out my mortgage. My property in San Francisco, that one cash flows very well, but it's an older property. It's kind of far away for us to manage, even for my family, because they're based in San Jose. So I know that, I don't want to deal with any major issues. I probably need to sell it. I mean, that one is cash flowing great because I have 2 tenants, one on top, one on bottom. But, I know I need to sell that if I want to have, more liquidity. And then out of my 2 apartments, my 26 unit has been doing great. My 20 unit's been doing okay. So if I were to sell one, I'd sell my 20 unit and I could use that to pay off my 26 unit if I wanted to, or 1031 exchange into a different apartment complex, right? But because I own these assets for a long period of time now, I know like which ones are kind of carrying the team and which ones are lagging. So you can kind of trim the ones that are lagging, right? But who knows? The ones that are lagging may do better in the next few years. It's hard to gauge. So that's why it's key about owning your assets long term. So that's why it's not realistic to live off your income in like, 3 to 5 years, unless you're just not making that much money from your W-2 or you live in a significantly low cost of living area, right? So, this is speaking from a guy who I pursued financial freedom hard, right? I pursued financial freedom hard. I had bought 90 units, had end up selling my mobile home park, bought 52 units today, that cash flow about 10K a month, but I'm still working because I know that, okay, it's really uncertain right now in real estate. So let's wait it out, right? And, obviously I built a 6 million plus net worth. So if I were to sell all my real estate, pay off my primary residence, which is, let's say, $1 million gone, that's 5 million. So I could basically pay taxes and all that. I'd have roughly around $5 million that I could invest in the index funds. 4% rule, that's 200K a year. I'm basically retired, right? But, most people haven't achieved that and they claim that they're, early retired, but they just left their W-2 and they're just pursuing a different business, right? Whether it's syndication, whether that's fixing and flipping real estate. But for me, I have no interest into leaving my W-2 job to give myself another job, right? Like for me, fixing and flipping doesn't sound too enticing. Maybe I'll try it and see how it feels. Because for me, I don't want to like do all this work just to sell it and then you get like maybe 10K, which is nice. But like I want to hold assets long term to build true wealth. I want to be wealthy, not rich, right? So with that, like I said, if you want to achieve true fire from real estate, it's about 10 to 15 years, I would say. So 10 years is the fastest. 15 years is I think, the most realistic, assuming you have a high income W-2, right? If you don't, maybe it takes you 20 years, right? And so just know about 10 to 15 years is the fastest you can go. So if I started 2017 at 27, probably the latest is kind of like early 40s, like 42, 43. My goal now is like 40. So, and kind of backtracking, I just want to give context as to my fire journey. But now, why is the fire movement becoming less enticing? Is because I think people are realizing how hard it is, right? It's not easy to basically have high income, keep your expenses as low as possible. Kind of the rice beans top ramen mentality. House hack, live very frugally, defer a lot of gratification, keep your expenses low, keep your income as high as possible, and then invest the difference into real estate, right? Like whether you're doing the BRRRR strategy, whether you're doing house hacking, whether you're buying out of state rentals, it's harder, right? It takes patience, and it takes you, like I said, 15 years of this grind. And I'm on year, I started like saving money since 2013, and I'm on year 12, right? And I started real estate about 8 years ago. So it's a grind, right? And then a lot of people flame out. Like a lot of people like lose motivation. Like even myself, like sometimes I lose motivation, right? And I'm almost towards the end because it's hard to grind for 15 years. Like, how hard it is to like, you know, show up to work some days and you're just like, my God, I own 52 units of real estate. Like, I don't need to show up. And despite that, I still know that, my W-2 job is good. It provides consistent income that, real estate income isn't as consistent. So I know it's the long-term game. But that's why people burn out and people lose motivation because they realize during the fire movement, like, geez, it's easier just for me to work, right? Like, I don't have to like super hyper save like 80% of my income to invest and live like cheap. But like, can I, set aside some money and just invest in index funds? Like I said, I could have achieved financial freedom by my early 50s, maybe about 10 years later than with real estate, just by investing passively into index funds, like a certain percent, like $3,000 a month, right? And obviously my income grew over time, but $3,000 a month, you just invest in index funds. I could retire by 50 without doing much effort, right? But I wanted more. I wanted to retire by 35. And then I burnt myself out trying to go to retire by 35. I did a bunch of stupid shit, right? I bought a mobile home park, which lost me money, and now it's slowing me down. I lost money on an Amazon dropshipping store. I lost money on a pharmacy, and I thought because I wanted multiple streams of income. But what happened was I had shiny object syndrome. I was being impatient. I was being unrealistic, and it's not my fault because I'm watching all these YouTube channels that set very unrealistic expectations, and that's why I am so empowered to create my content, is because I want to show the more realistic side. Like, it's going to take 10 to 15 years at fastest if you invest in real estate. 15 years at fastest. So it's not going to be 5 years or 3 years. If you do, maybe you have a short-term rental portfolio, but I guarantee you, I don't know many people who own a large short-term rental portfolio for 15 years because they burn out from it, right? Like, if you look at all the short-term rental people, they just started in like 2017, and a lot of them are selling them, right? Like the host of the Bigger Pockets, Rob, he like had 40 short-term rentals. He's a short-term rental guru, and he's selling a bunch of them because he knows that it's like not sustainable, right? So like, it's only good for short term. Like what's the point of building something that's not sustainable over a long period of time? I see it's a waste of time, and that's why people burn out, right? So like, you have to make sure that you're striving for the right thing. Like for me, it's long-term rental, buying right, renovating it, forcing appreciation, and owning it long term, right? That's the true path to wealth. I don't want to syndicate because a lot of syndicators are getting burnt. I don't want to fix and flip because it's, it's more active. So like for me, it's building that lifestyle that I want, and that's why people burn out, because they're unfocused, they're unclear, they built something that's not sustainable for a long period of time, and that's why they end up saying, the fire movement is not worth it, right? So that's really the mindset you have to have, and that's why people are flaming out in the fire movement, because they are too distracted, they are unfocused, and they built something that it's just basically another job. Like for me, when I leave my job, I don't want another job. I just want to like do what I want. So for me, I'd rather like just work my job, which I'm already comfortable with, instead of like do like some fix and flip business, right? Like obviously I could do it, and maybe I should like on the side. But obviously it's harder now with high interest rates. Like it's becoming a buyer's market, so you're not always guaranteed to make money with fix and flips either. So for me, I'd rather just put in the effort, fix it up, and then keep it long term. Put in the work one time, hold it for the rest of my life, ideally, right? Or if I need to sell it, use it to wipe off some debt off the table. So, that's kind of been my mindset with this. And that's why people are burning out. Like I said, it's not easy to like sustain this for like 15 years. It takes like, if you can sustain it for 15 years, you are probably the 1%. And like I said, 99% of people will fail. I know a lot of people who, they come for more money, and they lose motivation because they're like, well, it was fun, but then, they're not as motivated because obviously they come for money already. Versus, me, I'm trying to build a life that I want, but now I kind of became more realistic that, hey, it may not be until like I'm in my 40s. Um, so it's really a long term grind, and that's why people flame out with the fire movement. Because like, if you look at most people in the fire movement, the ones who are like my age, they're like doing lean fi in a low cost of living area. I don't want to live like that, right? Or the people who did fire, they're like older, they're like in their 40s and 50s. Well, because they had time for their assets to compound, they had time for their assets to stabilize. So if you look at, those are the two makeups of the people. If you want to retire early at my age, it'll be lean fi in a cheaper area. Like, I could move to a significantly cheaper area and then lean fire there. But what's the point, right? For me, if I retire, I want to retire on my terms. I want to live how I want to live, and I want to fat fire essentially. So I'd rather delay working further to have that fat fire versus the lean fire. So, anyways, thanks for listening to my long rant about why the fire movement is kind of dying. Let me know if you have any questions. If you want to buy multifamily real estate with one-on-one coaching and mentorship, click on the link tree down below. And just so you know, 10 to 15 years is what it's going to take. So if you don't mind that, click on my link tree. Send me an email from my link tree if you want a discount code. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you next one. Thank you.